webcasting ready? Yeah. Okay, yep. I'm going to declare the meeting open for overview and scrutiny. Right, hello everyone. Thank you for coming for this important meeting. We've got, for Democratic Services, we've got our officer Adrian Hendry with us. On the website, we've got Becky Norton, and the officers for the evening are Andrew and Chris when he'll arrive. We've got Chris, and we've got Christine and Paula as well. Welcome, guys. Thank you. So just to take you through the webcasting introduction first, this meeting is to be webcast. Members are reminded of the need to activate their microphones before speaking. I will read the following announcement. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing. If you are seated in the lower public seating area, it is likely that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility that your image will become part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human and data protection rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should move to the upper public gallery. Just quick check on apologies for absence.
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillors McIver, Hadley and Heather.
Okay, thank you. It's a fairly light agenda, so I thought I'll go without a vice chairman today, unless somebody has a burning desire to be one today. Okay, brilliant. Here seeing nods. So substitute members?
Yes, we have Councillor Helen Kane for Councillor McIver.
Okay, great. Declarations of interest, anyone? I don't have any. Councillor Bassett?
Thank you. As Non-Executive Director of Qualis, when anything is mentioned in Qualis, I will not take part of the discussion, but I shall remain just to hear what is said.
Great, thank you. Notes of the previous meeting, if everyone's happy, I can sign them off. Yep, brilliant. Thank you. We're moving swiftly on to terms of reference and work programme. Any comments on those from anyone? No? Okay. Right, moving on to the exciting part. We've got the item number 7, which is People Strategy Update. Over to Paula. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for context to let the committee know, we carried out this survey called Creating Our Tomorrow, Our Ways of Working for the Future and Beyond over the summer months, and we're sharing the results of that survey with you this evening. The results were attached to your agenda, and I'll be showing a short video which shows the same information but will play for approximately 2 minutes. We had a very good response to the survey. It was 77% of our employees, which is a huge improvement on our previous survey of 21. So a link to the video and a PDF copy of the executive summary is to be included in the next available members bulletin, and that may have already happened, but it's certainly planned to be published, and I'm hoping that gives you the opportunity to consider the results with a little more time, and if there are any questions, we're certainly, please email me following that. So I am going to test our technology, so please bear with me.
Drum roll, yes. Drum roll, please.
Just to give some highlight results, I know that that was a very quick run through, but as I said, we have attached that video and the PDF to the member bulletin, or it will be done pretty soon, and a hard copy was attached to this evening's agenda. So just some highlights. 81% of our employees who responded to the survey said that they can feel that they can be flexible in their role. 86% of who responded said that having a flexible working pattern is beneficial to them. Employees would like to continue to work from home. Just over 70% of their working time, so that shows that they are interested in hybrid working. Of those that can work from home, 83% feel that they are currently working in a hybrid way, and that means that they are working in various ways and in various locations. 95% of employees feel that they are well equipped to work in line with the hybrid approach. If members may have spotted that there were a number of perceived barriers and issues to working in a hybrid approach. One of those was isolation, another was their equipment, and a further one was training. So as part of the survey, we did ask for comments and text to some of the questions, and the people team are looking at those and deciding what actions are required to be taken forward, either by the people team or managers working with their teams. So happy to take any questions. The survey does cover an awful amount of information. I'm not quite sure on how much detail that I will have, but I will try to answer that. If not, then I can certainly include those answers in the minutes. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Paula, for the extensive report. We've got 3 hands up, so yeah. I don't know who put your hands up first. Councillor Kane, do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Through you, if we could ask Paula to tell us, he said 80% of the people who actually participated in this survey. It could be 80% of 100 people, it could be 80% of 20. Can you give me, please, how many really participated in numbers?
Yep, thank you, Chairman. It was a total of 410 employees completed the survey, and that equated to 77% of the workforce. Thank you.
Okay, yep, thank you. Yeah, I particularly like the fact that women were winning on that one. 65% of the females. Councillor Brooks.
I'm very pleased to see we've done this again, actually. Thank you. Just a couple of things. Were the interims included? Because I do seem to have a lot of emails that have interim at the bottom of people's job titles.
I think they probably would have been if they are part of our workforce and they have an email address, then yes. I will find out definitely, but I'd be surprised if they wasn't.
Thank you. It was great to read that a lot of people felt their managers have been very supportive, particularly during all the challenges we've had in the last 2.5 years. The one thing that really did jump out at me a bit was the only 23% could actively promote the council, despite all these as a place to work, because we used to do this every 4 years about at the National Portrait Gallery. So I went through several of them. But it just concerns me, really, that only 23 could actually actively promote it. And I wonder if you were exploring a bit why the other people were either quite passive or, couldn't recommend it, despite all the positive things that have been said about people's personal managers.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. We are looking further at the data in terms of numbers, but not actually going back to ask specific questions at this stage. We found that the longer somebody had been employed by the council, the less likely they would have recommended the council. And anecdotally, you could say that that they are used to what benefits the council has and maybe takes it for granted, whereas somebody new coming into the organisation can see actually that, it is, we are a very good employer, but we haven't gone back out to specifically ask that question, but certainly it does reduce with length of service.
It just concerned me really, because 23% is not many. That's only 1 in 4. And I bet of the people that didn't participate, quite a lot of them would not be promoting it or were totally apathetic, one or the other. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Bassett and then Councillor White.
Thank you. Yes, I have several questions on this, being as someone who worked remotely for about 15 years. I've got quite a lot of experience of it because I used to work across Europe, Middle East and Africa, so obviously a point is going into an office. First thing is, working from home does help with work-life balance, freely admit that. But what safeguards do we have that we are actually getting value for money, that the person is doing the work they should be doing, that we're monitoring the quality of work, and, you know, is that they are doing what they should be doing, to be honest? That's the first question. Do you want them in a row or one at a time? Sorry.
I think one at a time would help, I think. So we have in place a performance management process in terms of one-to-ones, managers regularly checking in with their staff. There are parts of the organisation that have targets set for them to respond to certain queries, to carry out certain pieces of work that's monitored, to take X number of calls over a period of time, deal with X number of planning applications or whatever the measure is. So that certainly is measured. We have been having discussions about perhaps reinforcing that performance management framework. We're not quite there yet, and we will continue that discussion. But there are mechanisms and checking in points that managers do.
Okay, that leads me to a second part of the question, is how do we control the allocation of work to the individuals? Because you might find someone adapts to home life very well and is really doing work, but other people just struggle. There's always distractions at home. Oh, I'll just go do this. I'll just go make a cup of coffee. And how are we actually controlling that allocation of work accordingly?
Thank you, Chairman. I wouldn't call it necessarily controlling the work allocation, but that is, yes, I was going to say that it's very much down to the line manager to allocate the work and to monitor that work, both in terms of quality and quantity. And that is down to team managers or service managers to carry out that function within the organisation.
That moves me on to, I looked at the chart there on page 17, which says just about 50% of the people don't really come in the office. They're 81 to 100% not in the office. Therefore, they lose contact with the other people they are working with. They lose contact with their manager. I know I've done this elsewhere, is we had a policy that people needed to come in on 2 days a week just so people could see how they are, what do they look like. And also is on that 2 days a week, they lose that sense of social isolation. do we have any basic policy that people should come in at least once a day a week?
Thank you, Chairman. We don't have those sorts of specific times. It is down to the line manager in conjunction with the team to make those arrangements that's suitable for that particular team. We don't consider it a one-size-fits-all, and we have encouraged line managers, team managers to bring back their teams in on a regular basis so that connection can continue. And to pick up all of the points that you have mentioned, also that the survey mentions the isolation, and to re-establish that team working. I know that some managers have regular team meetings on Teams, and that works for some teams, but for others I'm aware that they do come in on a more regular basis than that. So that's how we're working at the moment. But there isn't a specific policy that says everybody must come in at least once a week.
Thank you. Also,
Sorry, Councillor Bassett, can I just let Officer Small try and deal with one of the questions here?
I think we are aware of a number of organisations and councils even that do require staff to come in on a fixed number of days per week. But I think we chose to go down the line of well, if we force or require somebody to come in on certain days, that might still not make them any more productive. I realise there are benefits from team working, but we encourage our staff through the managers to actually come together formally as teams and on a regular basis, so there is our interaction. I mean, no member of staff, no, that's not quite true actually, I'll caveat that. Most members of staff aren't required to work from home, it's a choice, it's given to them of course. Any member of staff that wants to come into the office can come into the office and work from there any number of days per week if they wish to. I think it's the fact, I think the fact that the staff prefer not to have to come in, if they are working on emails, data input, any number of tasks proves how popular it's become, and hybridised working is definitely something that staff value, as you can see that from the results themselves. But we do try to make sure that we don't lose contact with those individuals as a result of them being home working for more days than not. So we encourage through a number of different means, whether it's team meetings, whether it's all employee gatherings, whether it's events and so on. We try to provide lots of different opportunities and forums for them to come in and collaborate. And that's where office-based working is probably at its most powerful. It's when people come together as teams to share ideas, to share problems, to work together to find solutions. But if you're sat at a screen in the office just doing your emails or working on a spreadsheet, then there's little advantage to that over being at home and doing the same task, really. And we have seen from many staff that productivity increases for those that don't have to travel and use the time to work at home, and many are more productive. We are, as you highlighted, we are mindful that how do we make sure that all staff are performing and producing as we would expect. So we're very much focused upon outputs, and we encourage all of our managers and within the organisation to judge people based upon what they produced. Easier for some roles which are more repetitive or more task-based, for example, then we can monitor whether all staff are producing the number of or completing the number of tasks we expect to on a given day, whether that's input of council tax returns, for example. Where work is more whether it's more strategic, more project-based, for example, then it's harder to measure on a daily basis. So we have project goals and timelines, and we monitor those through various mechanisms. It's always been, I think it is a challenge working out how to make sure your workforce is as productive as it could be when working from home. And I think many organisations have been wrestling with that over the last 2 years or so. But I think it's always important to remember that there are also benefits and gains to the organisation from staff working from home as well. And we need to balance the two to make sure that to ensure that we get the best outcome for the residents as a result of our working patterns. And I think we're doing that. There's always more work to be done in that space. We're continuing to make sure that as our colleagues are engaged and performing and not isolated, and we don't drift apart as an organisation through not having, not feeling part of an organisation because you don't see your colleagues. So as I say, we are finding lots of different mechanisms to make sure they are still engaged in terms of feeling part of the organisation, understanding what the organisation is achieving, understanding what we're collectively delivering on and so on, and understanding what the corporate problems are. And we are using modern technology as well to do some of that. So it doesn't have to be face-to-face. We are using sort of big Zoom or team meetings to make sure that our workforce and colleagues are engaged with what's happening within the organisation as well. So it's different mechanisms, different tools, still learning, I think.
I think, Paula, did you want to come in quickly before the second question?
Yeah, just to, one of the questions that we asked in the survey, that we asked for comments back rather than a yes, no, or strongly agree, disagree, was around how our employees use the building. And it was very much around working collaboratively, come together to work as a team. Some roles are obviously customer-facing roles, so they need to be in more than working at home. Face-to-face meetings with colleagues or their teams. Sometimes that they could be experiencing IT issues, but project delivery and having a balance of remote home working and being in the office working. So they were some of the reasons that they gave us to using the office. Just to pick up on some of the points that Andrew has made around, we do have hybrid employee briefings on a regular basis, and that's some people will come in virtually and face to face. I think the last employee briefing we had 80 plus employees here in the office, that in the conference facilities at that employee briefing. We also the senior leadership team meet every 2 weeks face to face here in the building. The leadership team meet monthly face to face, and we also have quarterly meetings with our wider leadership team, which are team managers, and that was trying to show how we can use the building and the benefits of that way of working, so we can, as leaders, we are being examples of the way that we wanted to lead and to be able to use the building in that collaborative and face-to-face way.
Thank you.
That's right, that leads me on to my next question beautifully. One of the issues that members, I know several have spoken to me, is where there is not many people in the office anymore. And yes, we've got the member contact system where you put in what you want to talk to someone about. But if it's a more serious matter, we don't know who to contact anymore. We used to know, and no disrespect, but I don't want to have to keep phoning you, Andrew, to say, we've got a problem. And I just want to make it from a member side, and hopefully other members will agree, it'll be handy if we had a list of, if you've got a problem at this and it's not getting resolved, who do we contact to try and escalate the issue, to raise the issue. Putting in an online request is going off into the cloud, and response in 5-10 days is not quite what we want to see. So that's the first thing. And also, as part of all people working from home, I know I used to do it annually, was checking that it's right, have you got the facilities at home? Have you got a nice desk? Is it at the right height? Is the screen at the right height? Have you got the right chair? Because that is all to do with safety in the workplace. I presume we've got a video course that shows people what to do, and do we then actually help pay for that equipment so they can do it?
Andrew, you'd like to come in first and then Paula?
I'll take the first part of that question if I can. And I think we're always very sensitive to making sure that members get responses to the questions that they have or the residents' concerns. I mean, there is a members' portal really for raising questions in the first instance. If you're not getting responses through that, then obviously I'd recommend that you go through the customer services team. We've got Sue Lewis and Tracy Scott, both will be there to help members if they feel that they're not getting responses to the questions or aren't getting the answers in a timely time frame. But if at the end of the day you're still not getting answers, and I don't believe that you won't, but if you're not, then I invite you to contact myself or Jane Gould, who will be more than happy to make sure you do get an answer in a reasonable time frame. There should be a process to make sure that members get the answers in a timely fashion. And that's through the customer services team. But if there are issues, then please do report those to us and we'll take action based upon that.
Okay, sorry, quick word from Paula and then... Oh, sorry, you want to... Yeah, both. On the same one, is it a little connected to the first question? Sorry, yeah, go ahead then. No, you go ahead, Councillor Lyon.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to come back on the customer service one. This is a similar question that we've been working with town and parish councils on. Who can they contact if they're using the system and they need an urgent answer? And this is exactly the customer service team. There's Sue Lewis and Tracy Scott, who are there as probably the best experts in navigating through the organisation. And this is something that I'm really keen that we actually address. So if there are issues, certainly they're the first point of contact. If people are having problems and they can't get an answer from an officer point of view, it's Andrew and Jen, or if you have a customer service issue, come and talk to me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lyon. Councillor Kane.
Just to add on to Alan's comments there, it's really important that it does go through the customer service desk. Alan and myself are working very hard on the systems, trying to get it right. If people circumvent the customer service desk, we don't know about the problem. And if we don't know about the problem, we can't fix it. So it's really important it goes through the customer service desk.
Thank you. Paula? Yeah. Go on then.
Yes, quickly, because I had an issue, just like Councillor Bassett was mentioning, who do I talk to? I had a housing issue for a particular resident and I didn't know who to speak to. So I put it on the system. I got an inquiry Sunday night. Monday morning I put it on the system. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I had somebody from housing phone me up and address the questions. So the system does work. If you put it on the system and there is an urgency to it, put that urgency down and the system will find the problem. Not every way, but it generally works quite efficiently.
Good to know. Thank you. Paula?
Thank you, Chairman. So, response to your second question about DSE assessments. Yes, we have an electronic form that is based on the HSE assessment form, and within that there is guidance for employees as they're going through it. So it is an employee-driven form, and there's guidance on there. And what happens is that the results of that assessment goes through to the manager, so they sort out if there are any problems that the employee has highlighted about equipment, etc. So yes, we have that. It's employee driven. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any more questions? Otherwise, I'll bring you
No,
down.
I think I've asked enough.
Brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks. Yeah, one more specific thing and one more general thing, if I can. I was interested to hear that. I mean, it's quite striking. I mean, there's nearly half the employees, based on this, have joined the council in the last 2 years. So, that will have been, in or post-pandemic. Most of them probably never met a councillor, or particularly know what councillors do, or understand, what they're for. And I wonder if that potentially has something to do with it. But yeah, I mean, obviously that also means that a lot of these have been recruited to the council, fairly recently, and wondered what we knew about, why people join the council, and what's effective about persuading people to apply to roles for the council, and similarly at the other end, why people leave the council.
Thank you, Chairman. But I'll give quite a generic answer to that because I don't have any specific information, but certainly as an organisation we have been working very hard around our recruitment processes and making that as easy as we can. If you remember, several years ago we implemented a different way of recognising roles, and our pay table and our salaries were reviewed and looked at, and we started to move away from national pay so we could be far more competitive in the market. So I think that's an attraction for us. I think we have an excellent reputation through COVID in the wellbeing resources that we've offered staff, and certainly I think that has come through as part of our recruitment processes as well, and I think it's been received extremely positively. I don't know that for absolute sure, but certainly we could think about asking those sorts of questions. But yeah, I think there's a couple of positives around the organisation as to why people join us. I think also the flexibility, what we've been talking about as part of this survey, is also key also. What we find in the commentary and HR press, they talk about the hybrid and flexible working offer of employees, and where it's not offered, people are put off from applying for those roles.
Thank you, Paul. Sorry, did you want to come back out?
If I can,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, isn't it, looking at the list of vacancies you circulated earlier in the year and vacancies later in the report, later in the agenda, it's still clearly a challenge for the council. That's also noticeable that actually it's jobs like cleaners and concierges and grounds maintenance, where flexible working is not really an option, are some of the hardest to fill. Also some of the lowest paid as well. But the more generic question is, obviously this is the people strategy, is at the heart of the item. I just wondered, how what the biggest changes between this survey and the last time we did it were, or most significant changes, and how the people strategy is changing or evolving in response to the answers that you've got.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the previous survey wasn't exactly the same questions, so it's very difficult to see the absolute trends and the movement along for our employees. But certainly, I think what is striking is the amount of people that have got used to the hybrid way of working, and Andrew had picked up earlier that some people really benefit. They think it's an absolute benefit, and the survey bears that out in 80% of our employees are telling us that is their preferred way of working, the hybrid method. We are putting together a new people strategy. We're just coming to the end of our current people strategy. So absolutely we'll be looking at, especially around the comments that people have put into this particular survey, and how we answer some of their concerns going forward in the new people strategy. So that work is just starting. Thank you.
Thanks. So what do you think the biggest changes will be, or the areas of greatest focus will need to be?
Sorry, I did make a note of that, sort of. Sorry, I've left that note on my desk, but it is around looking at how we can tackle the isolation. Also, some of the comments that have been picked up around perhaps looking at performance and making sure that people are comfortable with what that looks like across the board. And again, that's not a one-size-fits-all policy, and it will mean different things for different parts of the organisation. we are looking still at developing. I think we still need to think about our manager's skill set in working, them working remotely as well as managing staff working remotely. So there's still some work to be done. I don't think it's a done deal. I don't think it's settled across many organisations. It was thrown at organisations very suddenly through COVID, and as we're coming out of it, it's given us time to take a look at the landscape, hence these surveys that we've undertaken to find out the temperature of our employees and what they think of hybrid working. Now we're out of COVID and what that means for them, for their future, and us as an organisation, our future as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morgan quickly, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Kane.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a quick question. The number of employees over the last year, have they gone up or down? And Councillor Whitehouse mentioned about vacancies. What is it? Probably in the report, I didn't see it. The number of vacancies we have at the moment.
Thank you. I don't have those numbers to hand. The report that was referred to is, if you can appreciate, our vacancies are a very snapshot at one particular time, and that was a few months ago. We've actually gone through a finance exercise, and my colleague Chris may have that number in his head, but no, I think it might be about 30 odd vacancies. Is it more? Sorry.
Yeah,
apologies.
Andrew.
I think the number's higher than that actually, but that's split across a whole range of roles, from where it be caretakers and cleaners in the HRA, in the housing stock, for example, or grounds maintenance staff and so on. And I think the number is last time I saw it was getting on for 80. But some of those are being held vacant as opposed to us trying to fill them. Some of those are posts that we realised actually we don't need those posts to deliver services in certain ways. So some are actively trying to be filled, some we're trying to suppress to try and manage some of the budget pressures that we're under in the current climate, of course, and some that we just long-term held vacant but will be picked up probably as part of our budget setting process for next year.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
The other part of the question, employees gone up or down? Numbers.
It's going down. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Kane, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is not a question, it's just an observation. It's just a comment, really. I would like to commend you for organising those meetings with come and meet your officers to meet the councillors, because the point was taken as well that these people are maybe new in the job, they don't know the councillors, that it is an excellent opportunity. So I just think that please continue with those. They are brilliant. Thank you.
My only request will be if we can have one in the evening. I know we've had them during the day so far, but thank you. Councillor Whitehouse and then Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I mean, from memory, it was sort of 60 or 70 vacancies in summer, so I mean, that is an increase. And if there's, 400 odd staff for the council as a whole, that's more or less 20% vacancies we're carrying, isn't it? Which is quite a striking figure, albeit presumably some of those are covered by interims or by
Not necessarily, because we're not going for all of them, are we? Sorry, Andrew, talking on your behalf.
I mean, it's a fair observation. Some of them are actually filled by agency or temporary or contract staff. So we have a process, and it's been reported as part of the finance report. And Chris might allude to it later. There is a financial challenge in the current year, and we are reviewing every post that comes vacant, so that there has to be a justification for filling that role. So we're not adding to our own financial problem at this moment in time. So each role that does become vacant, a case has to be made, and it's reviewed by either myself or Jennifer Gould at strategic level to make sure that we do need to fill each role, because there's, as I say, we need to make sure that the budget remains balanced so we can continue to deliver services. So we have to look at each one carefully. Some are therefore being held and have been held for a while to ease the budget situation. Some have become vacant through changes and efficiency in service delivery. Some, as we say, are being filled through agency and contract staff, and some are being actively advertised and being filled. So there's always a kind of a group in there that are in the process of being exited and re-employed. From the numbers I've seen, the number of vacancies in the establishment is pretty static, actually. It's a lot more than I would expect, but it's pretty static. There is a move to reduce the number of employees in the council ultimately, just because employees are probably the largest part of our budget overall, and if we have to reduce the budget, then inevitably that means reducing the number of the salary budget. I think, so I don't think it's gone up or down. I'm not quite sure how many establishment posts we have on the books. I think it's somewhere in the region of 550, but it might be a bit higher than that if you add on the vacancies. But it's a measure of service delivery changes all the time. Posts no longer become necessary, and we'll capture those as part of the budget process each year to sweep the ones that aren't required longer term or going forward, and we'll capture those probably as part of the budget process for next year.
Okay, thank you. Did you? No, you're fine. Yeah, okay. Councillor Brooks.
More, sorry. Did this include, for instance, Paula, staff that have been transferred over to Qualis, like the housing people who deal with housing repairs are now employed by Qualis?
Thank you. No, because they're no longer employees of Epping Forest District Council.
Thank you. Just a quick question from me, if I may, actually. So it's interesting that we've got flexibility, work-life balance, and saving costs at the top three. But the same, whether it's same or similar number of people who were surveyed, didn't think it was conducive to improved health or enabling effective, conducive to improved health, balancing of the business needs and enhanced service delivery. So I'm wondering if the next focus might be more, because we're looking at customer-centric kind of service that we provide, and maybe that message is not, I don't know, I don't want to presume, but yeah, maybe that message is sort of getting lost in it, in all the flexibility that people would want for the roles, to say that we need to have that balance, isn't it? So yes, brilliant to have flexibility with hybrid way of working, but are we balancing it with customer service delivery? And yeah, thank you. Yeah, Andrew. Yeah.
I would say probably to the committee that actually we're acutely concerned about that. First and foremost is that hybridised working has to work for, not just for the employees, it has to work for our residents as a district as a whole. So I know we're acutely concerned with making sure that there is no detriment and ultimately there is benefit to the customers from employees, wherever they choose to work. And we keep a constant focus on that to make sure that that's the case. Councillor Lyon is very much in his portfolio focused on making sure that is the case, and holds us to task on a regular basis for making sure, to demonstrate to him that service is improving. I mean, I think we've had some issues of late, not necessarily, I don't think, associated with staff working from home. It's just volume of calls associated with other issues such as waste, for example. So, I mean, there's a danger in conflating the two, and I do hear it. I can't get through on the phones, it must be because staff are working from home. Actually, I don't think that is the case. I think that's just a volume of calls issue associated with something else. I like to think, for the most part, that most staff are more productive from working from home, give more hours rather than fewer as a result of that, and work-life balance is an improvement. So, I mean, sometimes we see an outcome and we assume that the root cause of that is something when it probably is not. So that's probably all I need to say. Thank you.
No, yeah, it was more sort of alluding to what the staff needs to be aware that maybe they're actually better than what they are, but they are thinking that they're not delivering, but, you know, but they probably are. It's more about their own perception of what the top three are resulting to the bottom few. Sorry,
So-
yeah. Anybody else want to?
Sorry, Chair.
Go
can
on,
I-
yeah.
I think performance, performance was an issue even before we had hybrid working, if I'm honest with you. Just because somebody was sat at a desk all day, every day in an office, didn't mean they were necessarily productive. So I think, making sure that performance management has always been a challenge for every employer or organisation, one way or the other. It's just that hybrid working has now come along and gives us a different set of challenges. But the issue remains constant and it remains important, and we are focused on it to make sure that we are getting the best outcome, as I say, for residents of the district.
Great, thank you. Councillor Lyon and then Councillor King.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, hearing what Andrew's saying is absolutely right. I mean, my pressure is to make sure that we are looking at customers and they're first in what we do. And certainly that is the message that Susan Lewis has been given, putting yourself in customers' shoes, and that is key. So it's really about customers, all our customers, whether they're internal customers, i.e. other members of staff, or members or external customers in terms of residents and businesses. So that's fundamental to what we're doing. We're also looking at better ways of actually communicating, and the constant issue is, can we improve our systems, our website, to make it more effective so that our customers have a better experience and can actually do things themselves without actually having to call us. So the whole essence really is on improved efficiency with our staff, but also making the systems work for us.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Lyon. Councillor King.
Yeah, just in response to your question, Chairman, yes, I think people have filled in this questionnaire and they've answered subjectively how it has affected them personally working hybrid, and it's aided their flexibility, their work-life balance. Had the question been, how do you think the benefits to the council are, you might have got some different answers.
Yeah. And I think that's what it was about. The 38% was about engaged delivery, and engagement was low because they felt that they weren't delivering. Councillors, any other questions from anyone before we move on then? Great, thank you very much, Paula, for the report. Councillor Gabbett, did you have a question?
That's just a mouse.
That's just a mouse, yes, that's fine. Thank you. It's a mouse. It's just a mouse, isn't it?
In the shape of a hand.
Oh, there you go. Hands gone, everyone. Thank you. Moving on to point number 8, which is Cabinet Report outsourcing of the concierge service. Over to Christine.
Thank you, Chairman. For members of the committee that I haven't met previously, I'm Christine Farigi, the Service Manager for Business Support. So this report is going to Cabinet on the 12th of December, and Councillor Kane, as portfolio holder for the service, requested for the report to come here for scrutiny first. So any comments will be provided to Cabinet to support in their decision making. So the report has 2 recommendations. The first is to outsource the concierge service at the civic offices, and the second is to award the contract to PCS Group for a period of 3 years initially. So just to explain a little bit about what the concierge do. So some of their responsibilities are opening and closing of the building, maintaining and managing our bookable spaces, such as the conference suite, monitoring the employee car park, issuing security cards, monitoring the building CCTV, and much more. They also have some health and safety responsibilities around first aid and fire evacuation processes, and it's a team that's heavily relied upon for the operation of the civic offices. So the proposed outsourcing of the service is a solution to an operational issue that we have. So for the last year, the team has had an open vacancy, which we've failed to recruit to on various occasions. We also have some employee relations issues, which could lead to additional vacancies. It's been a challenge to resource the unpredictable requirements of the service, and we need a workforce that's flexible, particularly as we're partnering with Regis, our tenant on the top floor, for the marketing and advertising of our bookable spaces. So to assist with that, we ran an internal casual concierge recruitment campaign, and unfortunately only 1 application was received, so that kind of reaffirms the position that we're in of struggling to recruit to those roles. So There's very little resilience within the structure. A lot of reliance is placed on a couple of colleagues, and that exposes the council to single points of failure, particularly around unplanned and planned absences, and that also results in health and safety issues. So back in May, I put together a short business case to explore the outsourcing of the service based on soft market research, on the basis that existing employees would 2p across if a decision was made to outsource the service. So we worked with various stakeholders to capture the business requirements, and then worked with an organisation called Everything FM. So they're a procurement company who specialise in facilities management type contracts to go out to tender. So 4 companies, all of which we currently work with in some capacity, showed an interest, and they attended a site visit at the SIC offices. And out of those 4 companies, only 1 put forward a bid, which again reaffirms the position that we're in. So PCS Group, who also hold our current corporate cleaning contract across our office sites, provided a really strong, tailored, detailed response, and they scored 96.5 out of 100 during the evaluation process. Now, as only one contractor had made a bid, it wasn't possible for me to assess value for money during that evaluation process. So as we work with each of them in some capacity already, I compared their hourly rate to look for value for money with the existing providers, and PCS were actually the most competitive, which is reassuring. Now, in terms of the challenges that we've faced and what makes them different, they were established back in 1979, so they've got years of experience, they're professionals in that field. They provide various services outside of concierge, such as facilities management and grounds maintenance. Some of their clients include the Natural History Museum, Gucci, and the McDonald's head office. They've got a wide range of resources already to hand because they maintain a roster of highly skilled employees. That also includes relief teams whose sole job is to go out at short notice and cover unplanned absences, which that's something that we have an issue with at the moment. They also offer competitive salaries and rewards such as Employee of the Month and attendance bonuses. So that takes me onto the finances. So based on a 3-year contract, the costs for year 1 and 2 are lower than the current operating costs, and year 3 is higher. However, the savings made in the first 2 years will offset the increase in the 3rd year. And aside from that, if we were to keep the service in-house by year 3, it's highly likely that it would cost more to run in-house due to salary increases and the contracts that we already have in place increasing. So just to summarise what the benefits of outsourcing are outside of the finances, we'll be increasing our resilience, as we'll be working with a company that can be scalable to our needs and ensure that we always have appropriately trained staff available to cover shift requirements. We've got an opportunity to work with the service provider and shape the service and what we want that to look like. There's an added extra of having security trained concierge on site, and they'll be supporting the welcome desk and the incident manager should the need arise. That's something that we don't have at the moment. This option also provides consistent, stable costs during uncertain times for the council, and it removes other miscellaneous costs that you have when you run a service in-house, such as recruitment costs. So I'm open to questions, and I am aware of a couple of typos that are in the report, particularly on point 12, if anyone else has picked those up, but happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Christine. That's a really extensive report there. I've got a few questions myself, but I'd rather open it to the floor first. Councillor Whitehouse?
Yeah, no, I can see why the recommendations have been made. I mean, my main question is, what happens in year 4?
Thank you, Chairman. So it's a contract that we would keep under review for year 1, 2 and 3, with the hope that if it works well, we could extend that. Something else that we had a conversation about before we went out to tender was including the welcome desk within that contract. So it's something that we don't feel that we're ready for at the moment. We thought that we can see what the benefits are in this 3-year contract and then potentially include more services such as the welcome desk in the contract.
Okay, thank Councillor Brooks?
I know it's very common to do this, particularly in a building where we've got Regis upstairs and us downstairs. I just wondered, firstly, why do you think only one company chose to bid for it? What we were asking, was it so unreasonable? I am fascinated about that, really. And also, I think my experience is, having worked at the front of desk, we went sort of hybrid at the Portrait Gallery because it was felt that the in-house staff were abusing the overtime system, let's put it like that, and knocking up a high amount of overtime and also being off sick quite a lot. So gradually the service went from one or two people from private contractors to almost all private contractors, but we still kept one or two in-house people that were on the payroll. I can see the advantages, but the thing that you don't get sometimes is a good knowledge of what's happening in the council, because those things do help a lot, I think, to know what's really going on in the organisation. And people don't invest in it quite as much.
Thank you, Chairman. So the contract would be managed by one of the team managers who's an EFDC employee. The existing employees would be 2P'd across to the contract, so we would still have that relationship, and they would still have the understanding of the building and the mechanics and an understanding of what's going on. Now, the idea is that for consistency, the same concierge would be the standard officers that we have here day to day, and then we have the relief teams for planned and unplanned absences. So I would hope over a period of 3 years, well, quicker than 3 years, but that they would make that investment because it's still their role. And if we felt that they weren't, we could feed that back during the contract management meetings.
Okay, Councillor Bassett?
Thank you. Yeah, just following up a little bit on Ruth's point, you're close to what I got put down here, is obviously the concierge service quite often is the first point of contact. Therefore, we've got to ensure they are the right quality, trained and know what they're talking about when someone walks up to them and says, I've got this issue, what should I do? Our current ones are trained, but I know there's the problems on people in, people out. Would we have a training handbook for people that they must be aware of or could refer to actually come in at short notice if someone's off sick or something like that? That's the first part.
Christine?
Apologies, I thought you were going on to the second part. So yes, it's something that we need to speak about in terms of how do those relief teams work. So if we do go ahead with the outsourcing, that's absolutely something that we would pick up, because if it's something the PCS group already have in place for other organisations such as Gucci and the Natural History Museum, I would assume that it's working. So it's just understanding how, and like you say, the good idea of having some kind of book for people to have a handover. And like I say, Dawn Baird, the team manager, would be managing the contract, and she's on site quite a lot too. So I don't have any concerns there.
So just take the part a bit further. We had a fire drill the other week and the concierge didn't know how to turn the fire alarm off. He didn't know where the key was, and it got very messy for a long time.
Thank you, Chairman. So on that point, it was a contractor that was covering, and he had been trained how to turn the fire panel off, which he did do. So he knew what he was doing there. The issue was where one of the fire points, the glass was actually smashed, it kept triggering the alarm back off again. So somebody from the facilities management rota was on their way to site to repair that. But that was something that hasn't happened before, so it was an oversight, and he's now been trained, all of the concierge have been trained in how to override the panel, should that ever happen again. So it was a unique situation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I just thought I'd raise it because it emphasised the other point of not knowing where to go or what to do. The other point was just in the report, item 15 about pensions. where it says, you know, they can come back to us if pension contribution was not enough. Have they put a reasonable figure in their quote? Because they could come back to any amount.
So they haven't, but we've assessed the risk along with some of the employee relations issues that we have at the moment, and we're comfortable that there isn't a risk there.
Just on that note then, Councillor Bassett, if I can just ask a quick question as a follow-up. Do we then have, in terms of, they've said that they will, where's my question gone? Oh, here it is. So that they would negotiate the figure at that point, but do we know at what point can they ask for that, whether it's a year later, 2 years later? Is there sort of a clause in the break in the clause for that?
I'm not sure, but I'll find out and I can send it through for the minutes.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then my questions. So currently you say we use a contractor to fill some of the vacancies, or when people are off or off sick or whatever. Was that contractor asked to put in a bid as well, I assume?
They were, yes, they chose not to.
Yeah, chose not to. Okay, great. So the only other thing I noticed was, at the moment in the report it says we've got two people at the time, at any one time. Have we even trialed to see what that looks like if it's only one person available? Have we done any kind of due diligence on that?
So PCS Group carry out time in motion studies, so it was actually their recommendation that that's the amount of people that we require. Now the big difference is with the overnight resource. So at the moment they're not particularly productive because they're security and they work, I think, 10 p.m. until 6 a.m, purely monitoring the CCTV and doing a sweep of the building to make sure everything's secure. The evening and out of hours concierge would be carrying out concierge work, so they would be able to do things like admin, emails, security passes, and setting up the conference suite for meetings that are coming up on a Monday or the following day. So it's going to be productive hours that will then leave the daytime people to focus on our customers. So we're not concerned from that aspect. We've also got people in the wider business support team that currently help with things like arranging refreshments and different bits and bobs like that they can continue to do. So we've got a little bit of resilience in-house there still.
That we could do that, okay. Have the PCS Group got any other experience in terms of doing this, providing the service for councils, any other councils?
I'm not aware actually of any other councils. Like I say, their clients tend to be kind of central London based. They do manage Harlow College as well, but I haven't seen any other councils on there.
Yeah,
on their
it's more I
books,
thought
no.
if they as a company know what our requirements are, then perhaps the people that they send to us as a replacement may have some awareness, but okay. Is there any other questions? I had the pensions ones answered. I think it's really good that evening, the night time have got a specific role built in rather than just, you know, doing the security part. The only other question I had was, when we've looked up the additional concierge charge as and when for meetings or high-risk meetings type events, hopefully we don't have too many of those, but do they have to be hired at 8-hour blocks only, or can that be an hourly basis as and when we want it?
Yeah, so what we had a budget meeting actually earlier in the week, and we've suggested keeping a very small budget in for what's called ex-jobs. So the ex-police officers that come in at the moment, they tend to be 8-hour blocks. Okay. But like you say, it's on the very rare occasion, and I don't think we've used them this year actually. From going through the budget, I don't think we've. Yeah, looking at the budget books, we haven't needed to this year, so it really is very few and far between.
Okay, good to know. Great, that's all me done.
I've just remembered Councillor Brooks did ask a first question that I missed off because we went on to the second one. It was around, you were interested in why only one contractor had bid. And I think so one of them was ex-jobs, and I think once it got to the governance piece of what they would need to do, it maybe was a bit too much. It's not something that they're used to. And Manpower and TSS tend to be more security focused. They don't have any concierge services that they provide at the moment, whereas PCS Group already provide concierge to other organisations.
Okay, great, thank you. Oh, Paula, yes, would you like to come in?
I just wanted to ask the committee just before we finish about any specific comments that they want to feed through into Cabinet, because that's what Christine is going to take back as part of the discussion with Cabinet. So whether there's anything specific as a committee, a scrutiny committee, that you would like Christine to feed back as part of their decision making. Thank you.
Sure. Councillor Bassett and then Councillor Brooks.
I'm just interested in how the staff feel about the outsourcing, though.
So we can include that. They've been kept up to date at every stage of the process, and to be honest, don't seem particularly concerned. I think because we're being transparent and explaining, and they know that there'd be a 2P agreement where they move over on their existing terms and conditions. No concerns have been raised so far. Yeah.
So my only comment was the fact of making sure the people coming in here were trained and know what's going on.
Yeah. Councillor Whitehouse?
Yeah, my point was going to be to link that to the continuity of service. You know, one of the things you want to avoid, if possible, with this outsourcing is, you know, continued rotation of different people.
I think mine would just be a review of how one person concierge is working for us as a service provider, but apart from that. Yep. Great, thank you everyone. Did you have something else as well, Paula, for your bit? Did you want anything to take back to the Cabinet for your bit? Just Christine's one.
Yes, thank you. That it was just that aspect. We're trying to make sure that, as a scrutiny committee, your views are taken in as part of the consideration by Cabinet, because that's really how it should work.
Yeah.
So
and
thank you for
did
that.
anyone have any comments on the people strategy part, so we can provide that to Paula as well, if there is any? No? Great. Okay, do we move on to the Q2 budget monitoring report?
Sorry, slight, not so much point of order, but just the previous one required a recommendation or decision.
No.
It says recommendation. Well, that's the Cabinet report. This is Cabinet. Okay.
Yep. All good? Okay, brilliant. So yeah, point number 9. We've got item number 9. Yes, please, definitely. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Q2 budget reports and monitoring reporting. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. Item 9, then, which appears on pages 41 to 57 of your agenda this evening, sets out the Q2 position for 22-23. In other words, the forecast outturn for this financial year based on available information as at the 30th of September. The report covers the revenue and capital positions for both the General Fund and the Housing Revenue Account. This report, in terms of content, builds on the expanded analysis provided in the Q1 update, thus providing committee members with further visibility of the balance sheet impact of financial projections. As with Q1, Epping Forest District Council has continued to experience the same financial challenges as other local authorities in Q2 as it tries to manage the local impact of the ongoing global economic crisis. Page 43, including Appendix A on page 55, shows that a number of quite substantial financial pressures are being experienced, which are driving a forecast general fund revenue overspend of 1.25 million as at the end of September. This is, of course, a very similar position picture to Q1, where the corresponding forecast was 1.196 million. So the headline is very much a case of as we were. But with the big issues remaining the same. However, the numbers have moved slightly, both up and down. As explained in paragraph 2.4 on page 45, spiralling inflation is continuing to impact, especially on staffing costs in particular. As mentioned in quarter one, the original budget assumption for the pay award was 2% for 22-23. However, as members will know, inflation has increased pay expectations across the private and the public sector, and the council is no different. Since my previous report, a fixed sum pay settlement of £1,925 to all pay grades has now been reached for 22-23. That equates to an average increase of around 5% for employees. This is expected to cost up to a further £800,000, including on costs. However, there remains a number, as we were talking about earlier, there remains a number of temporary staff vacancies, which adds up to quite a few savings, which is broadly offsetting the pressure, which helps in the short term at least. Although the cost pressure on staff is being generally contained for now, there are some other substantial pressures that are driving the overspend, with the delayed implementation of the local plan being a common denominator in two cases. Firstly, paragraph 2.2 explains that the delay continues to affect income from planning applications, with a budget shortfall of £549,000 now anticipated. Similarly, and now larger in terms of magnitude, is the anticipated income from Qualis, which is £945,000 off track, as planning delays have hampered progress on a number of key development sites. This is slowing down the drawdown of EFDC loans to Qualis, with cash flow requirements not as large as originally expected for now. Paragraph 2.2 also explains a range of other smaller pressures within the Commercial and Technical Services Directorate, which are combining to drive a projected net overspend of £534,000. And the position would have been worse were it not for a notable positive variance on recycling, which is driven by an anticipated surplus of £541,000 on income received from the sale of recyclable materials due to a substantial increase in market rates. Turning to paragraph 2.3, which highlights some positive news. There is some, with significant budget underspends forecast for corporate services, community and wellbeing and HRA recharges. Further details on all significant variances are presented in paragraphs 2.2 to 2.6, and if the forecast is accurate, the deficit would need to be funded from the General Fund Reserve balance, which would leave the year-end balance of around 3 million, as presented in paragraph 3.1. This is below the Council's adopted minimum contingency balance of 4 million. For the sake of completeness, the table in paragraph 3.3 on page 48 provides a brief summary of actual movements on earmarked reserves for the first 6 months of the financial year. As is usually the case, the Community Projects Reserve has seen the highest level of activity. The HRA position is presented in paragraph 4.1 on page 49. An underspend of 4.043 million is anticipated, which is driven by the greatly reduced need to make direct revenue contributions to capital due to slippage on the HRA capital programme. Required contributions are now forecast to be 970,000 in 22-23 compared to the original budget expectation of 5.4 million. The HRA balance itself is forecast to end the year at 4.5 million, which is well above the target minimum of £2 million included in the HRA business plan, and a reconciliation is also presented in paragraph 4.4 on page 50. Very briefly then, to finish off on capital, presented in sections 5 and 6, beginning on page 51. Spending on both General Fund and HRA capital has continued to be subdued in quarter two, with the delayed drawdown of Qualis loans, as mentioned previously, being the biggest factor behind a forecast underspend of 91.6 million on the General Fund programme, and delays in the house building programme driving a forecast underspend of 30.5 million on the HRA programme. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, who'd like to go first? Councillor Bassett. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Firstly, can I thank you and your whole team, because I know how difficult it is at the moment. It's how should we say, it's trying to catch a jelly, the way things are changing everywhere. Also, I think should point, this is not a unique situation for councils. All the way around the country, they are all in similar difficulties. And we do know of some, such as Thurrock, that have actually said, look, we're broke. What do we do? Have we heard anything about government help for councils who are all struggling with this current situation?
We've had the autumn statement a couple of weeks, well, was it about 10 days ago now? I think it was the 17th of November. Actually, I mean, there was some clues in there, shall we say, but not really not really any particularly good news, I don't think, for district councils. I mean, it did say in there that departmental expenditure limits for local government is expected to increase by 33%, which on the face of it sounds very promising, but the devil is in the detail, I believe, and that's dominated by adult social care costs in particular, which is clearly not a district council function. And also support for business rates. There's quite a well-rounded business rate support package, again aimed at businesses rather than district councils ourselves. So not really particularly bad news in there, but not particularly good news either. And we have had subsequent confirmation, for example, since the autumn statement, that members may recall that we were given compensation for the increase, for example, in national insurance that was implemented, 1.25%, which I think it was the previous government, I don't know how many we've had this year, but I think it was the previous government that decided to reverse the national insurance increase, and a short while later we've discovered that they're going to withdraw our funding as well accordingly. So they're taking back what they gave us for that. So all in all, not good, but I suppose the assurance I could give members is that we did put a fairly cautious estimate in terms of our medium-term financial plan and expectations for the settlement. We're assuming, based on the government's previous pronouncements, that all of our separate grant funding, as it were, will cease with effect from 23-24. Speaking to colleagues around Essex, some councils have got more optimistic assumptions in than us, so the only way is up, hopefully, but I've no guarantees, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Chris. Yep.
Second part.
Yes, please.
Obviously, with times have got hard, we've got the social housing and rents and everything else. Have we seen, what is the collection rate? Let's put it that way.
A very good question. The collection rates actually are holding up very well in 22-23. However, there is a sort of a growing consensus, I think you'd say, that this can't go on for much longer as the economic difficulties take further effect. So you know, the autumn statement, I think it was the Institute for Fiscal Studies, said that households are about to experience the worst fall in living standards, I think, since the late 1940s, and those kind of statistics potentially feed through to collection rates on the council tax side of things especially. So on that basis we are looking at the tax base assumptions at the moment. There is a possibility, we fear, that local council tax support recipients could increase, which has a reducing impact on the tax base. And the other side of the equation is a potential reduction in the council tax collected overall. So at the moment we budget to collect 98% of the council tax raised. We are potentially looking at the moment at a potentially lower percentage. We don't know what yet, but it's what we're actively looking at the moment. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Weeks.
I just wondered if we were experiencing more people cancelling direct debits, because if you're short of money, and you're not comfortable you're going to have enough left in at the time the direct debit comes out to pay your council tax, that's one thing I think you would do. And similarly, I'm wondering how our rent collections are holding out too.
You've got me on both points there. I will speak to my colleagues and feed back the answers on both of those points. So. I mean, as I say, at the moment the collection rates are holding up for 22-23, so I wouldn't expect there to be any dramatic change in direct debits at this point in time. And I think it's probably also worth adding that housing rents, a lot of social tenants are in receipt of benefits, and benefits, as we know, are being protected by September RPI, so that they're going to receive a 10.1% uplift. So that should help shore up the ability to pay housing rents to a significant extent. I don't know if you know, Andrew, what the percentage of tenants we have on benefits. I think it's over half, isn't it? I think.
Having dealt with cases of people in the past who got into terrible arrears, I'm hoping that the housing team will be proactive when they see people falling back, particularly at the moment. You know, and they've always been very understanding in trying to come to payment plans, modest payment plans, but I think it's going to be even more necessary to sort of catch people early before they get into really severe arrears, because quite a lot of, I mean, obviously I'm only talking anecdotally, but I know that there are quite a few people who do work who are in our social, you know, our EFDC tenants, and some of them are really on a very tight budget.
One of the things I noticed recently was I had a phone call with the energy company, and they actually asked those two questions now, that can you afford it, and are you able to pay essential services first? And they actually listed council tax in that question. So it's quite interesting that I thought they asked that question first before you do the payments. Councillor Kane?
Yes, that's a quite different question altogether. You mentioned that the planning applications and people are actually delaying putting any planning applications. But we do have planning applications pending. And surely, if that is within the council to actually give permission or not, I think that the planning department has something to answer for, and not just the people who are delaying.
Andrew or Chris? Andrew? Yeah.
If I can, Chair. So I think, yes, there are still a number of planning applications are coming through and being processed, but I think the local plan will unlock, you know, certain new areas of land for development. And I think, you know, some of the income that's been assumed will be generated from some of the, say, major development areas, but some of the larger development areas that are waiting on the local plan release before they will be submitted by the developers. So developers are just holding back before and until such time as the local plan gives them permission to do those developments.
Yeah,
Can I
Kay?
come back? Yeah, I understand that fully. The only thing I'm just saying that we do have already planning applications that they are delayed, and there shouldn't be any need for that delay if we're going to, you know, to benefit from the 106 money and everything else. That's what I'm saying, that the planning department should actually just to see what applications are there and get on with it.
On that, do we have a backlog on that for planning?
I don't know what the current position was. I know that there was as a result of some of the environmental issues in Natural England, I think there was a backlog that did build up, but that's, that was, I think, almost a year since that was unlocked, and I think a lot of progress has been made in terms of bringing forward applications that had been delayed until that had been resolved. I don't know what the current situation is in terms of whether there is a backlog. I'm not hearing that there is, but I'll need to go away and check that.
Okay, thank you. Chris, would you like to respond?
Sorry, it's probably worth mentioning, just a small consolation perhaps, the actual projected shortfall in planning applications income from 22-23 is actually reduced in Q2 compared to Q1, so there has been a slightly better news in Q2. It's still bad news on the basis that the budget was built based on the assumption that the local plan would be in place, which would cause a peak, if you like, or an upturn, if you like, in planning applications, which hasn't come. But the actual core planning applications that are coming through, in terms of income at least, has been moderately better in Q2 than expected. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks. I just wanted to get clear in my own mind the sort of drivers behind the squeeze on loan margins referred to with Qualis on page 43. Is it because we're borrowing short-term at rates which move regularly, whereas we've got an agreement with Qualis, we're sort of lending at long-term at more fixed rates? Or is it because the council making a commercial decision not to loan, not to move what it's lending at the same level as what it's paying for to borrow?
I mean, I obviously haven't got a crystal ball and didn't see the economic crisis coming and the impact on interest rates. But broadly speaking, the way it works is that we match the loans for simplicity, as partly for simplicity. So we borrow from the PWLB and then we on lend to Qualis, and then the council benefits by on lending at a higher rate. Now, the need to draw down cash for Qualis is dictated at the moment by these development sites. If the sites are not being developed, then they don't need the cash to pay the builders and procure the materials, etc., etc. So therefore, they don't draw down the loan. We don't borrow the money to pass on to them, otherwise we are caught with the cost to carry, so to speak, in terms of the borrowing. The other side of the other part to the story is interest rates have increased, so those margins have come down because our borrowing costs have gone up. So the amount that we can lend to Qualis at is sort of been at the same level. So the margins themselves have come down, but primarily it's driven by the timings of the drawdowns. So as the various developments go back, then the actual margins that we get, it's a timing thing at the moment, primarily, but it's being squeezed by interest rates as well.
So thanks. Yeah. So I get the timing thing. So that's the vast majority of the 944,000. what I didn't understand. So, I mean, if we're effectively charging Qualis, PLWLB rates plus whatever our margin is, the margins shouldn't change, should they? They should just go up and down in parallel.
Chris.
That's one way it could be done, but that isn't the way it's been done. We've got agreements with Qualis, and clearly Qualis have got their financial challenges to the environment that they're operating in at the moment, so it has to be affordable to Qualis. So, I mean, we're still making a margin. We're not, rest assured, we're not on lending at a loss or anything, but it's not the margin that we were making until quite recently. It's been, those rates have been increasing sharply since earlier this year. So, having said that, they have stabilised a little bit and are levelling off and reducing slightly in the last few weeks following the autumn statement. So it's not all doom and gloom, but it's all relative to where we were heading a few weeks ago.
So sorry to labour, but just so I'm clear in mind. So sort of in quotes, it's a sort of in quotes commercial decision to lend to Qualis at a more competitive cost, and because we're borrowing at a higher cost, there's less margin, less profit in between. Is that what you're saying?
It was a balancing act because the council, Qualis is a wholly owned company of the council. We want Qualis to be successful for obvious reasons, and the more Qualis have to pay us, then the less profitable Qualis will be. So the viability of the schemes from their side of things becomes ever tighter. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that, Chris. Any other questions? No? Should we move on to the next point? Any other questions? Sorry. No.
Well, I should just go back to the planning, because if Qualis cannot actually fulfill, their building plans, then that must come from something. Obviously, everything is going up. I understand that, but there must be some issues here with planning if they cannot fulfill their obligations to build.
It's the local plan, isn't it? It's being stuck. Sorry. I think it's just a statement, isn't it? You're making more than... Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, we've answered that question. Okay, so points...
Recommendations, I think, too.
Sorry, what?
There are recommendations to note the report.
There are.
So there are a series of recommendations which are just to basically to note the report.
Oh, can we... I just wanted to check. We've got several recommendations on the report. Are we happy to note them? Noted. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Kane wants a bit more time. They're just at the beginning of the report, yeah.
Going to note the position. Going to note the position. So.
Yeah, happy with? Okay, great. So moving on to item 10. Updated medium-term financial plan, please. Chris, yeah, over to you.
Item 9 then, members, and just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, is the updated financial plan. We're moving from 22-23 to 23-24 now. So item 9, which appears on pages 59 to 80 of your agenda, sets out the updated medium-term financial plan. This is the first iteration of the medium-term financial plan within the 23-24 budget cycle, and was presented to Cabinet on the 10th of October. It's a forward-looking document which provides a tentative, I emphasise tentative at this stage, look at the Council's financial picture over the coming 5 years, 23-24 through to 27-28, and sets the scene by providing a framework for developing both the general fund and the housing revenue account budgets for 23-24. The general fund forecast within the medium-term financial plan reveals a projected deficit of 4.126 million for 23-24. This reflects major spending pressures highlighted, driven by inflation, as highlighted in the previous agenda item, especially on employees and supplies and services, which is exacerbated by an assumed drop in government grants of 1.154 million, which I also mentioned earlier. Estimated net expenditure for 23-24 is 19.4 million compared to anticipated funding of just 15.3 million, hence the 4.1 million pound gap. Looking further ahead, assuming a balanced budget is achieved for 23-24 without recourse to the use of reserves, a budget gap is expected to open up again in the general fund from 24-25, with annual budget pressures in the region of £1.4 million anticipated for 2 consecutive financial years, 24-25 and 25-26. The housing revenue account forecast reveals a broadly balanced position over the 5-year period 23-24 to 27-28, with an initial surplus of 682,000 anticipated in 23-24, followed by a series of smaller deficits totalling 767,000. However, this is achieved through substantially reining back HRA contributions to capital in order to maintain a minimum HRA balance of £2 million as determined by the HRA business plan. It's probably worth adding at that point as well that, as presented here, the housing revenue account becomes increasingly unviable from year 11 onwards, so officers are looking at that at the moment with members. So the next stage then, finance officers with the strategic direction of the Cabinet are currently working hard on developing draft budget options that address the projected budget deficit for Cabinet consideration on December the 12th. Thereafter, and in accordance with the financial planning framework adopted by the Cabinet on the 10th of October, the detailed scrutiny process will commence, including the Stronger Council Select Committee scheduled for the 24th of January. This includes full consideration of both the General Fund and the HRA draft budgets and, as usual, initial proposals for fees and charges for the year ahead. Of course, given the size of the deficit this year, special attention will be given to the budget savings embedded in the draft, hopefully balanced budget. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Who'd like to start us off? Councillor Bassett. No, go for it. Councillor Bassett and then Councillor.
Thank you. Yes. Obviously, comments go before. We don't know what's coming, so it's very hard to judge. But obviously, we're seeing 4 million deficit 23-24. And if you look at the percentage that is of our normal budget, that's quite a significant amount of savings or increases in revenue we've got to achieve to actually meet that. And there's already work is there for December the 12th, which is about 3 weeks away. And I think it's fair to say that obviously things that must be looked at is increasing the council tax within the government guidelines of whatever it is, otherwise you've got to have a referendum. Obviously increasing the houses rents. The rents, I know there's a government motion in the thing which said how much they could increase by as well. And all these options must be on the table in order for us to balance our books.
Okay, Chris.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that all options are currently being considered. With regard to council tax, you mentioned the flexibility to increase council tax announced by the government. We're actually not affected by that. So, in the sense that the rules are, it's the higher of the maximum you're allowed for the referendum limit is the higher of £5 or 3%. £5 to us is higher than the 3% because we're a low council tax authority. So we're not actually affected by that. So that's the first thing to say on council tax. And with regards to rents, the government also announced a rent cap of 7%, which, as we know, is well below the current rate of inflation.
Okay, Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, looking at this at a fairly high level, I mean, it refers back to some discussion we had earlier. Obviously, the biggest chunk of expenditure is on staff, because it's staff who deliver most of the services. Always used to be accommodation, but that doesn't seem to be the case based on what we've got in front of us now. And then it used to be supplies and services. And I don't know whether it's a reflection of outsourcing or the accommodation. But anyway, obviously, the accommodation is less of a cost than it seemed to be at one stage. But do I sort of get the overall picture is that, you know, a substantial chunk of the savings will need to come from employees. There's limited flexibility in terms of contracts, and we've already done most of what we can do on accommodation, or is there more to do in those sort of areas?
Thank you. Andrew?
I think it's, thank you, Chair. I mean, salary costs have always been a problem. My experience is only the last 2 years or so, but I mean, salaries, the salary bill is something in the order of 24-25 million pounds across the council, including the housing revenue account, of course, and so will far exceed any other line of expenditure that we have really as a council. And so, you know, of course, we have to look at all options really, and we can't ignore the salary budget, so we're going to look to find ways as best we can to I mean, one of the advantages of actually having a comparatively high vacancy rate is that we can capture some of those without obviously impacting upon staff directly, and that's something that we obviously desire to do. The options are presented to have been presented to Cabinet, and Cabinet have been working through those. And you know, the next meeting of this committee will see a detailed set of proposals as agreed by Cabinet for consultation. But and we're always, I say we, Cabinet are always driven by the priority, first of all, of making sure that services are maintained as best as they can, really. And this is by far the most difficult budget that I think any of us have seen, really, in decades of practicing in this particular field. This is by far the most challenging. The impact of inflation, the impact of global economic issues on the budget of just not even conceived at this point, even, well, more than 6 months ago, 8 months, 10 months ago. No idea that this would be coming down the line, so there was no time to plan for it. You know, if you can see in an economic forecast that inflation would be rising over the medium term, then you can build that into your budget assumptions and make plans for it. But the priority is still to protect council services as first and foremost. So, but that's not always entirely possible given the size of the challenge. That said, the priority will always be about driving out efficiency in council services, so delivering the same service or a better service even at current or lower cost. Maximising income streams where we can, so we'll always look to maximise income from discretionary or value-added services as best we can. We'll look to raise the tax if that's available to us, and obviously Chris has highlighted that. The last thing that will always come down to is, if we can't balance it through any other means, then we'll have to think about reductions in service, and for some that, because most of the services are provided by staff, that might mean some staff reductions. We've been honest with staff as part of this process, but I anticipate if it does come down to staff ultimately, then I think we would be, through our vacancy, through efficiency, any impact upon staff in post will be minimal, I believe, at this moment in time. But I think you'll need to wait for the detailed proposals till we can actually see what that actually looks like.
Thank you. Did you want to come back? Fine. Okay, great. Any other questions? Wow, you've silenced everyone now. Right, so do we have any recommendations for the Cabinet? So Okay, brilliant. Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I know, it's a tough one. Okay, thank you very much for that report, Chris. Moving on, so we've just got future dates as an item. Any comments on those? We're fine with them? Future dates? Done? Okay. Well, I declare the meeting closed in that case. Thank you.